So I am a first generation Mexican immigrant. I am a woman of color. I am a queer woman of color. I am a queer witch woman of color. And, the list just goes on and on from there. So I feel so charged with a personal responsibility to show up in space fully as myself.
Wow.
Wow.
So we noted that there were a lot of people that we know that live witchy lives, and we wanted to just give you some other perspectives other than ours. So we're going to be having interviews off and on for the next few months, and we're starting today with a phenomenal person.
Roma. Prepare to have your witchy socks knocked off, because this woman is fierce.
Welcome to the Witchy Wit Podcast, where we look at life through a witchy lens. I'm Kimberlyn.
I'm Leilani.
At Witchy Wit, we explore current events,
ideas,
music and books,
and experiences in ways that recognize energy and life in everybody and everything.
We are both real witches.
And we bring two real perspectives through the lens of our different ages,
races,
and backgrounds.
With a healthy skepticism for what we have been told is true, our conversations are raw, candid, and vulnerable.
Join us as we cast a spell to uncover what we each know is true in our intuitive, witchy selves. Welcome to our circle. We're so glad to have each of you joining us here today at the Witchy Wit Podcast. Before we get started on this juicy, phenomenal interview with Roma, I wanted to take a second and just check in and see how we're doing outside of our witchy lives. So, Kimberlyn, what's up with you?
Yeah, and I don't know if I'd consider this outside my witchy life, because it's really, this is the time of the year when birds start to sing and little green things start to grow, and particularly after Snowvid, after all of that, it's so welcome. And I knew that I'm aligned with the seasons, and for some reason, I think because I'm spending so much time alone, I'm really feeling that, the sap is rising out there, and I'm kind of feeling like, whoa, a sap rising. I don't know, maybe, but a sap rising inside too, and I'm feeling really optimistic. Actually, people are really trying to be supportive of each other, as far as I can tell. And I'm a Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm. I'm that kind of Pollyanna optimist. But I really feel kind of justified. I feel like we're coming through the end of this, and this summer we can all get outside a little bit more, and I'm so looking forward to that. So happy! It's not quite spring yet, but happy spring in advance.
Okay, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Who is Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm?
Oh God!
Is that a literary illusion?
Yeah. She's just like this little girl who goes to this house where they're all pissy and mean, and she's just so optimistic that she basically changes them all to become a very happy. Or maybe that's Pollyanna. I always get them mixed up. But
okay.
They're both cockeyed optimists.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. It's children's literature from like the 50s, I'm sure.
I'm gonna go Google it.
Yeah, please do. What about with you? What's going on for you?
So I think that mine's similar somewhat. I think that I am turning into like a modern day Snow White, and here's why.
Okay, let's hear this.
So over COVID, I've spent a lot more time sitting in my backyard. And when I purchased my house because it's up against a green belt. I was less concerned with the house. I told my realtor this. I was like, she's like, what do you want in a house? I want trees. Well, what do you want the house to have? I just want mature trees. So my house backs up against a green belt, and I feel like I've befriended a possum and a raccoon.
Oh my gosh.
So I throw scraps of vegetables over the back fence,
mm-hmm,
and then I sit out on my back porch with a really bright flashlight, and I wait until I hear them, and then I turn the flashlight on.
And you see like the little eyes.
I do, and I can even hear the possum as he eats.
That's so sweet. I love that. I mean, I'm not a real fan of possums myself, but that idea, that kind of, being close to nature and being a part of it. That's so cool.
It's so cool. And then I have a new addition to my Snow White family. A couple nights ago, I heard owls. I know.
Yay.
And I went outside and I was looking for them in the trees, but those things can camouflage like crazy.
Yeah.
But then one finally flew, and I was able to spot it with my spotlight, and it was wonderful.
So, there's always someone who wants to like inject some cynicism in a situation. I'm just hoping that Mother Possum, protects her babies when they come later this month, because those owls are. I mean, they're really good at scooping up a little baby.
Really are.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, okay. Well.
I recorded their mating or their calls because I think because I was like, something is dying in the backyard.
A friend of mine said they saw hawks mating.
Whoa.
Well, isn't that amazing?
That is so amazing.
It's the circle of life. Wow. That's so cool. Really cool.
Okay, so I thought I heard the owls. So picture me, I'm running around I'm in my pajamas, which are black with moons and stars all over them. And then I have my iPhone in one hand and then my spotlight in the other hand. And I'm trying to get an audio recording of them so that I can send it to a woman of ours partner who is knowledgeable about this type of stuff. And I was able to catch an audio clip of them because part of it sounds like an owl, but then it gets a little crazy. So I wasn't sure if it's a mating call or like an aggressive territorial thing. So can I play it for you?
Sure.
Okay.
And mention your...
Yes. So I do have wind chimes to provide harmony while we listen to the owls. Okay. Are you ready?
Okay, yep.
Here we go. So doesn't it?
Yeah.
So the hoo 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 hoo. That sounds like owls, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But then the
She's like a little to the left. Faster, higher.
You know those owls ask for what they want.
Oh my gosh. Okay. One thing that we should note is that this was recorded over Zoom, and because of that, there's going to be a couple of internet glitches in there, a couple of lags, but this interview is so freaking phenomenal that we just decided to keep it all in there. So we're going to beg your indulgence as you listen to this. So here we go. Roma.
My name is Roma. My pronouns are she or they, and I am a witch and bruja.
Yay! Thank
Yes,
you.
You
so
are.
much.
I affirm that.
You have no idea how excited we are to have you here and to just kind of learn a little bit more about you and let our listeners learn a little bit about you as well. So thank you so very much for being here and being a part of this.
Yeah, thank you. I am so deeply honored and just thrilled to be here with you.
So Roma, how would you describe yourself and your practice?
So I would describe myself as a witch, as a bruja, and I know that can mean a lot of different things. And for me, I within the umbrella of witchiness, I identify as a hedge witch and as a movement and energy witch. Yeah. So a lot of my practice is based around home matters and practicality. I really love that. And then I love to dance. I love movement. I love raising energy that way. So those are kind of my big umbrella ideas of what witchiness means for me.
And would you mind explaining, because not everyone may know what you mean when you say bruja?
Yeah, so bruja is the Spanish word for witch. Thank you for asking that. And that too can mean so many different things, because across the diaspora in the Americas, which is my experience, that can mean so many different things. And there's indigenous practice, there's a lot of Afro-Latinos practices brought over during the slave trade as well. And so that can mean so many different things to folks. For me, I say bruja, it means the same thing, like my home-based practice, my movement practice, but it's important to me to incorporate that word because the fact that I'm a first-generation immigrant from Central Mexico is a super important part of my identity. So I just want to carry that term with me.
Thank you. It's like, don't mind us. We're just gonna like, this is so.
I'm just fangirling over here.
I was at this school.
Oh my God, I fangirl over y'all so much, all the time. I was listening to the podcast right before I hopped on here.
Oh, well, yeah, good. Get you in the mood. So let's see, where was I going to say? Oh, so, when and or how did you know that you were a witch or a bruja or bruja?
Thank you. I was definitely a little girl. I was a child. And the how is just kind of, I have no way to describe it other than a deep knowing with a capital K. And I think, depending on what kinds of things you follow or practice, if it's the Enneagram, then I've tested as a 4, which they have a thing, apparently. I don't do Enneagram work, but apparently 4s have a sense of being like different and other and destined or something. And I don't know that I want to tie myself up in all of that, but I did have a capital K knowing that something was different for me. And I think that could have been, hell, y'all know me, any number of things.
Yeah.
But among those was witchiness, the way that I felt my place of belonging in the world, the way that I connected with the world around me, with living beings, with flora and fauna. There was just some knowing in me. And then, reading stories as a child with witches in them, I was like, that's the cool character. That person is independent and knows what they're doing. And and then I think the first time that I felt a sense of recognition, which is kind of odd and maybe inappropriate for a 10-year-old, but I went and saw The Craft. I was spending the night at somebody's house and their parents took us to see The Craft, which, is pretty intense for 10-year-olds. But I saw that and I was like, oh, there we are.
Wow. Wow. So it sounds like you sensed this and then you saw a picture that kind of summed that up for you.
Yeah. Representation matters.
Man, that beach scene in The Craft, like I remember seeing that and being like, what?
Yes. I was like, oh, whatever that is, there it is.
Yeah. I think for me, it was when they're getting off the bus and the bus driver's, saying something about, being safe. And she says, oh, no, we're the ones that your mama warned you about. So that's not what she said, but that's how I took it because that was, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're the weirdos, mister.
Yes, that's it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Whose turn is it?
It's mine.
Okay, thank you.
Roma, are there any negotiations needed between your witchy and mundane lives?
I feel super privileged that there aren't really. I am fortunate to get to show up fully as I am in spaces. I have a tremendous network. And so for me, like in my personal life, home, I've got a fantastic partner who rocks my world and is super supportive of my practice, of my spirituality. And even though we have different spiritual practices, our spirituality is a component of our home life together and of our relationship. And so to show up in that fully as I am. And I also feel really fortunate that I work with a group of people that is really committed to authenticity and to people showing up as their full selves, including at work. So whether that's racial or ethnic identification, whether that's culture, whether that's practice and expression, they're super supportive, and that's a core part of our work. So both at home and at work, in my networks, in my greater community, theater community, dance community, I get to just be. And so I feel in a really unique, very privileged position that I don't feel like there's a lot of negotiation between my witchy and mundane life. They intertwine really closely for me.
Well, that is it's a real blessing, right? And
yeah,
and thank you for letting us be able to see some of that. The next question, I think I have a little bit of a sense of this, but I'm sure I don't have the full picture. And obviously the people who are listening to the podcast don't. So would you mind telling us a little bit about how you practice?
So my practice has two kind of main veins. One is home-based and the movement and energy-based. And in the home component of my practice, really has to do with just the integration of the practical and the spiritual for me. So I identify as a hedge witch, and that also is kind of an umbrella term that can mean a whole bunch of things. Among them is, so typically in the stories, the hedge witch is the person who lives, outside of the village, past the paths, maybe in the woods or past the woods. And so the hedge as a kind of border or divider between the witch and the rest of the folk, and also the hedge as a symbol of the supposed barrier between the living and the dead, or the mundane and the spiritual. And I think in different ways, it means all of that to me. And so for me, it's a blending of sacred space and mundane life. So in my home-based practice, what this means is I don't identify as a kitchen witch, but certainly I think kitchen witches could fall. Some might identify under the umbrella of hedge witchery. So it's things like making everything be a part of my witchcraft and my practice if I want it to be. Something as simple as sweeping my living room floor, if done with intention and care, can be magic. And so I might sprinkle some salt or some herbs and sweep up the space and think about the ways that I am clearing not just dirt and debris from my home, but energy, making space for the new. Or it can be making a meal for my loved ones and, thinking of them and their health and their well-being as I'm stirring the pot and sprinkling in my tons of spices. It's really about crafting a space that is nurturing and nourishing both physically and emotionally and spiritually. So that's kind of the way that my home practice is shaped. And then the other main vein of my work is around movement and energy. Leilani, I think you mentioned in an early episode that you consider yourself an energy witch, and that the way that you move energy often is through dance. And I identify with that so much. I feel most connected with the sacred and with the divine when I am dancing and feeling the pulse of the music deep in my body. I just trance right out. I leave this world and just connect to the greater energy of all the people in the room, or of the people who've made and recorded the music, or of the world. That's just huge for me. And so I care for my body, and in moving my body, in feeling out the world through it, I work magic.
Thank you. I have to say that is the best description of the head of all of these facets of the hedge witch that I've heard to date. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Totally.
So one question I have about that is how does our group practice tie into that? Or does our group practice tie into that?
Yeah, so I feel so lucky to be part of a home group that we share. And I think the way that it ties in for me is maybe two or threefold. One, the work I do with our group, the time I spend with the women in our circle is how I recharge. It's the source, the well from which I draw so much of my energy and confidence and knowing. And so just that alone, I spend an hour with our group and I feel like I can go back out into the world and conquer any goal. And so I get to bring that home with me and carry it around until the next time I get to recharge. That's one way. And the other is I feel really fortunate to be exposed to all kinds of practitioners through our group and all kinds of ways of doing magic. So, we've got kitchen witches who, through creating delicious, nurturing, exciting food and drink, work magic in the world. And we've got movement witches, and we've got diviners and practitioners of tarot or astrology, or who work with oracle decks. And we've got, musicians and just all kinds of practice that even if I don't necessarily come home and incorporate those specific things, just the exposure to different ways of practicing or different ideas really helps me be creative at home. And so I don't at all identify as a person. I am too much of a perfectionist and get kind of stressed out. I get a lot of anxiety around doing things right, even things that are supposed to be totally subjective and fun. But one of the women who I spent a lot of time with in our group has a saying that's you're the witch, you win. I'm the witch, I win. And I carry that with me all the time, because what it means for me is it gives me permission to make decisions, to take risks, to make mistakes, and also to decide, if a spell is like dropping a stick of cinnamon in my coffee and saying, today I want to show up focused and accomplish these 3 tasks, then that's magic. Or if I decide, I'm going to write down this thing that's troubling me and burn it in a candle on my desk before I get the day started, that's magic. I get to decide what it is, and I don't need to follow anyone else's rules. So that's a thing that I've heard in the circle. That's a thing that somebody has said that I have carried with me for years. So just being exposed to other women's ideas and ways of practicing mean I get to come home and be creative and give myself permission to play.
So before we hop into it, I just wanted to talk to you. We didn't struggle with how to word this, but we went back and forth. We said, what is the intersectionality between your faith and your mission, passion, or cause? So my intention with that question is for me, it's like my faith is not just about my faith, but it's about what is like my ethics and what's important to me, and furthering equity, social justice. So for me, the actions that I make, it's not when I go vote, it's not just about voting, it's about a lot of things. So that's kind of where we were going. So does that kind of make sense? Or I imagine it does to you, but
so she lives intersectionality.
Right.
I mean, sorry, I sense.
We just recorded an episode about the agreements. And we haven't put it out yet, but the whole episode, her and I are and then
that's modeling. That's modeling.
Exactly.
Okay. Is it cool if I read the question?
Yes.
Okay. What is the intersectionality between your faith and your mission, passion, and cause?
That is such a fabulous question. I think for me, at the core of so many things is authenticity. And I can go so many places with this in my mind map, all the connections that I make. Among them are, I grew up Catholic, and one of the things that I found in my switch to like full-time identifying as witch, and I have crafted my practice, that I really am the authority. I get to decide what's in and why. I get to decide how I move, what my responsibility is, what my accountability is, and how I relate to others in this way. Not to say that folks can't find that in Catholicism. That's just not the way that I found it. So, and I don't, a big part of authenticity in my work and the way that it intersects my spiritual work, my faith, and how it intersects with my like personal mission and passion in the world, is that it's really important to me to be a person who shows up with full authenticity, who can take responsibility for myself, and who can be at least one person in the room that's doing that. And I say that because I think in so many instances when I was younger, it would have meant the world to me to see somebody else modeling that and giving me permission to do that just by being. So I'm committed to being that at the very least. That's like the baseline anytime I walk into a room. And I'm committed to creating spaces with others where other people can do that, where everyone can show up in their full, powerful authenticity. And that means being willing to take responsibility for myself. And it means committing to accountability and to accepting that the ways that I move in the world, regardless of what my intention is, have impact. And I want to make sure that I'm interacting with my community in a way that my impact is nurturing, empowering, rather than in any way limiting. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of at the core of how my faith and my passion intersect. And then that looks like so many things. It looks like standing up for racial justice. It looks like, civic duty, participating in community, in making decisions that affect the whole. It means using my privilege to effect change and to make sure that others have the opportunity to show up as their full selves and to make choices in which they're taking responsibility and being accountable and co-creating a world where everybody gets to show up with dignity and have a say in how things are done and affect a change. Another way that my faith and my mission, my passion intersect is that I hold a lot of different identities that deeply affect how I move in the world and the communities that I'm in and the communities that I represent just by showing up in a room. So I am a first generation Mexican immigrant. I am a woman of color. I am a queer woman of color. I am a queer witch woman of color. And, the list just goes on and on from there. So I feel so charged with a personal responsibility to show up in space fully as myself, and to be someone who is willing to speak up if I feel there is something that needs to be said, if I notice that there's someone missing from the table, if I notice that the person is at the table but isn't being heard, I just all of these ways, so many ways that my lived experience, that my identities, that the communities who have fostered me and lifted me are with me all the time. And any room that I walk into, I am carrying those communities with me. I am carrying those parts of myself with me. And so my witchhood is a major part of who I am. My faith, my spiritual practice is a major part of who I am. And I yeah, I'm just deeply committed to weaving all of these together as I do my mundane work and my sacred work.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This is brilliant. Before we close, is there anything that you'd like to add, something we could have asked you about and we didn't, that you would like to share or you think we should know?
There's something I think I want you all to know, and then obviously any of this, I totally understand and support you using what serves, what fits, and you can chuck what doesn't. But another thing that's really important to me is, and one of the ways that I experienced my capital K knowing of witchhood as a child was the way that I experienced the world around me, the natural world around me, the connection that I feel with life, with us, and death, because for me, those two things are interwoven in so many ways. But life source, so whether it's a plant, whether it's an animal, all kinds of creatures, the way that they interact with each other, the symbiotic relationships, and the ways that these little networks connect an ecosystem with which itself connects with other ecosystems, and it all gets to happen on this beautiful planet. And there's elements on this planet that come from who knows what galaxy or what part of the universe. And so just all of the ways that so much of life, so much of our space is tied together, is interwoven, and impacts all the other pieces. For me, that interconnection, I experienced it scientifically just as much as spiritually. And I never struggled to reconcile the two. Like for me, it's super easy to experience them as interrelated. So just that, it's another thing that I bring with me, a kind of union between the sacred and the mundane, the scientific and the spiritual, what might seemingly be contradictions for me are fully embodied together.
That's beautifully put. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for sharing in such an articulate way. I think that is so, we get so much insight into you, but we also just get insight into just witchiness, which, variations of what that means. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled and so honored, and so excited to hear all of the other ways of being.
Leilani, did you have anything you'd like to add?
I just feel so just grateful to know you and to be with you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You're a blessing both to our community, but also to just knowing you as a friend, and knowing you in our various ways. It's been really illuminating for me. And then just loving on you is great too.
I feel the same way. I think my life is deeply enriched by knowing each of you, and I feel so much love and gratitude for your presence in the world.
Thank you.
I just cannot wait until we get to be in the same. I have this fantasy of being in the same room as you, and I'm pounding the floor across from you.
Yes, just lost, like total abandon.
Yes.
When you were talking about dancing and or movement in your body, I think of Leilani talking about the sacred thud, like
Yes. Yes, the pulsing beat of the communal experience.
Yes.
We asked Roma to choose a poem to end her interview with, and she chose Sandra Cisneros' Loose Woman, and reads it brilliantly.
Loose Woman by Sandra Cisneros. They say I'm a beast and feast on it, when all along I thought that's what a woman was. They say I'm a bitch or witch. I've claimed the same and never winced. They say I'm a macha, Hell on heels, viva la vulva, fire and brimstone, man-hating, devastating, boogie woman lesbian. Not necessarily, but I like the compliment. The mob arrives with stones and sticks to maim and lame and do me in. All the same, when I open my mouth, they wobble like gin. Diamonds and pearls tumble from my tongue, or toads and serpents, depending on the mood I'm in. I like the itch I provoke, the rustle of rumor like crinoline. I am the woman of myth and bullshit. True, I authored some of it. I built my little house of ill repute, brick by brick, labored, loved, and masoned it. I live like so, heart a sail, ballast, rudder, bow, rowdy, indulgent to excess, my sin and success. I think of me to gluttony. By all accounts, I am a danger to society. I'm Pancha Villa. I break laws, upset the natural order, anguish the Pope, and make fathers cry. I am beyond the jaw of law. I'm la desperada, most wanted public enemy. My happy picture grinning from the wall. I strike terror among the men. I can't be bothered what they think. Que se vayan a la ching chang chong. For this, the cross, the cavalry. In other words, I'm anarchy. I'm an aim well, shoot sharp, sharp-tongued, sharp-thinking, fast-speaking, foot-loose, loose-tongued, let-loose woman on the loose woman. Beware, honey. I'm bitch, beast, macha, guachale, ping, ping, ping. I break things.
So listening to this incredibly talented, skilled, powerful young woman is just amazing. I mean, the interview is phenomenal for obvious reasons, but it's also heartening to me as I move towards my cronage, that to see these young people, these young women who are kind of picking up the torch and going much further than I did, right, at that age. So I hope everyone enjoyed this interview with Roma as much as we did in recording this.
How it's amazing to me. How can someone embody such youthful vigor, but also such ageless wisdom
Exactly.
at the same time?
Exactly.
I just feel I feel so blessed to know her, and I'm really grateful that she agreed to come and share with our community.
Me too. I'm golf clapping.
We hope that you all enjoyed her presence on the Witchy Wit podcast as well. We are so grateful that you shared time with us in our circle so that we could learn and see this diverse representation of what it means to be a witch, or however these people are identifying. We have shareable links on our Facebook and Instagram, so you can find us there with little clips that are shareable for sound bites of our episodes, but also direct links to our episodes, so that way you can share them with friends and beloved witches. And then also, we'd love to hear shout outs from y'all about who you are, where you're listening, what type of practice you have, and what you're relating to on our podcast, or what you'd like to see. And you can send us that on Facebook or Instagram or through email. Thanks so much for sharing time with us today.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the magic that has unfolded here at Witchy Wit.
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Witchy Wit Podcast.
Email us at witchywit123@gmail.com. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Get exclusive content and support us on Patreon.
Stay witchy, y'all!